The current GRRP provides loans and grants to support eligible properties that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve energy and water efficiency, and strengthen climate resiliency.
Welcome to Buzz House, a Baker Tilly podcast where you can hear all the buzz around multifamily housing, with all the info you need to help you win now and anticipate tomorrow. Hi, I'm Don Bernards, the partner in charge of Baker Tilly's multifamily housing practice.
And I'm Gary Gibson, a partner at Baker Tilly, also specializing in consulting on multifamily housing transactions across the country.
Let's get started. Garrick and I have talked about and had a number of guests in the Buzz House to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act and what it means for multifamily housing. A lot of this discussion has been around energy efficiency, of course, and we've talked about things like solar credits and 45L energy efficiency credits and electric vehicle charging stations and related items, many grants to come out as well. Also coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act with notices of funding opportunities released in May here of 2023, HUD announced truly landmark funding to support green and resilient retrofits of properties participating in multifamily assisted housing programs. The program is entitled the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program. You might otherwise hear it referred to as GRRP. We are very excited to have someone many of our listeners know and recognize, Rob Hazelton, CEO of Dominion Due Diligence Group, to discuss some of these components of the GRRP. This program will have a large impact on HUD-assisted housing. So let's jump right into our discussion with Rob and turn it over to Garrick.
Thanks, Don. As always, I love your introductions. Hi, Rob. Thanks for coming on our podcast. Before we actually get started, Rob, we like our guests to tell our listeners a little bit about their background and themselves. Just go ahead and just kind of give a little background about what you're doing within your organization.
It's great to be here. I started D3G about 29 years ago as a consultant of the housing industry, in particular looking at LIHTC, FHA transactions, Section 202, 811. More recently, the Rental Assistance Demonstration, better known as RAD. Our firm provides an array of real estate due diligence services ranging from environmental site assessments to engineering due diligence, energy benchmarking, green building certification, architectural and cost review, as well as housing repositioning services. We primarily work with developers, lenders, municipalities, and our services are used nationwide. All we do is housing, and we're involved in over 2,500 senior and multifamily housing projects a year in this country.
I like that saying, all we do is housing. Maybe Don and I will take that for our Buzz House. So let's jump in with a question. So Rob, at a high level, would you please give our listeners a little bit like an overview of what the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program is actually about? I know Don and I have read this, but we want to hear it from you.
Sure, but a bit of history first. The current GRP builds off the original Green HUD Green Retrofit Program. Back in 2009, during the ARERA, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act stimulus package, there was a small program for about $275 million that greens HUD's portfolio. That original program and the version 1 participants really created HUD's green and energy underwriting standards, their FHA green MIP reduction program, as well as other green options. We build upon this now many years later, and the current GRRP provides loans and grants to support eligible properties that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve energy and water efficiency, and strengthen climate resiliency. It's well documented that low-income households face a disproportionately high energy burden and are most vulnerable to climate change impacts. Therefore, the grants and loans have two purposes: to significantly reduce energy efficiency and water use, and to make HUD-assisted multifamily properties more resilient to extreme weather events and natural disasters. Reducing energy use is directly related to greenhouse gas emission reduction through the term electrification, which is often used throughout these documents they provide us.
Rob, thanks very much for that overview. And as we've kind of talked about and alluded to, this is really for HUD multifamily assisted programs. Would you be able to kind of dive in a little bit? We know a number of programs out there, so dial in a little bit what kind of projects actually will be eligible.
Thank you, Don. Awards will be funded to properties already receiving HUD federal assistance through a project-based rental assistance contract or housing assistance payment contract. Importantly, it's a PBRA contract, not a PBVA contract. Some of the programs are most Section 8 PBRA contracts, including State Finance Housing Agency programs, Rural Housing 515-8 programs, but also most senior and housing for persons with disabilities under Section 202 and Section 811 apply. This includes our PRACs, our PRAs, and even recent capital advances. What excites me is the RAD projects closed prior to September 30th, 2021 also apply. These were the first 60,000 units of RAD that we did. And within this, they're ripe for recapitalization now because we did RAD-O-Matics back then. If these have PBRI contracts, a fantastic opportunity for deep green retrofits. Oh, and also a little known Section 236 IRP projects. There aren't many remaining out there, but those also apply as well.
Very good. Very good. So a wide swath of kind of these HUD-assisted properties. Robin, from early reading again of the language out there, we know there's 3 cohorts or levels, if you will, within the GRRP. Within these kind of 3 cohorts, can you let our listeners know what dollars are available? What's the timing for applying for these projects as well?
Well, the total amount is $837.5 million for grants and up to $4 billion in low interest rate loan authority by HUD. Cohort 1 is pretty simple. It's called Elements. It's a $140 million cap. There'll be approximately 200 awards made in this category. The maximum award per property is $750,000 with a unit cap of $40,000. Round 1 application will be accepted up until June 29th, 2023. The portal is already open for acceptance. There will be successive rounds every quarter after. These awards are designed to provide gap financing that make in-progress transactions more efficient and are climate resilient. Candidates should have material advance applications for recapitalization ready to close within the next 12 months. Examples being a tax credit reservation, an FHA firm commitment, or a Section 202-811 capital advance awardee. And the owners, if they enter this program, can pick from an array of utility-saving, climate resiliency, and carbon reduction construction items. Now, Cohort 2 is called Leading Edge, a little more advanced. There'll be $400 million available in this cohort, approximately 100 awards. Maximum award is $10 million per property with a per unit cap of $60,000. Now, Round 2 applications will be accepted up until July 31st, 2023. There will also be 3 more successive rounds after this every quarter. These awards are intended for owners with significant development capacity to execute construction that will achieve a high-level green building certification. To be selected, one must score well in HUD's multifamily building efficiency screening tool, known as MBEST. So we find that properties that currently use gas or oil heating for hot water and cooking score the best. Now, Cohort 3 is comprehensive. It goes up another notch. But a much larger bucket. Here we have $147 billion for authority, 300 awards we made, they predict. Maximum award is $20 million per project with a per unit cap of $80,000. Now, Round 3 applications are being accepted until August 31st, 2023. And again, we'll have 3 more rounds after this. Now, these awards are eligible to all HUD-assisted multifamily property owners, regardless of construction experience or greening experience. The funds are purposed for ambitious retrofits focused on utility efficiency, renewable energy generation, carbon emission reductions, and climate resiliency. These comprehensive awards are designed to involve significant HUD support and technical assistance. It's important to note, and climate resiliency. I'll talk later about the scoring of the cohorts, and this is where climate gets to be a big part of it. But a nice part about this cohort is it's for the unsavvy developer. It's for the lone owner of a 202. That's in a coastal community that really can make a change because HUD will be providing the technical assistance that these owners need to get through the process. Now, applications are electronically submitted on grants.gov. Very important to know. And be aware of the guidance and procedures of the Notice of Fund opportunities. They must be followed exactly. And why I say exactly is I got some statistics I reached out from version 1 GRP from 13 years ago. I was involved in this. And this shows how important quality of applications are. Back then, 54% of applications for grant funding were found to be ineligible property type and rejected. So I implore owners, make sure you meet the eligibility requirements. We don't want to bog down HUD with a bunch of applications that aren't going to go anywhere. Speed of execution is very important for HUD in this program. The second one, 18% of eligible applications were deemed incomplete and rejected. In this program, while I can't go over all the details, there are many pre-requirements you must submit with your application. Try not to miss any of those because you probably will get rejected because there'll be many applicants for these funds. And in the end of the last GRP, only 29% of all applications received were even funded. So your odds are less than a third. Quality applications, everything.
That's some great advice, Rob.
Yep.
You talk about the requirements, right? I mean, obviously, those are real dollars there, and it seems very programmatic. Could you maybe just kind of go over what those line item program requirements are basically for each cohort?
All the cohorts have some of the same requirements. And the first one, the most important one is get a hold of your utility data. Start benchmarking your properties. We call this a statement of energy performance in the Energy Star platform. You cannot submit your application until you have whole building energy data. So start reaching for that now. This is easy in a lot of 202 buildings because they're master metered, but within a multiple meter multifamily building, much harder to get those releases from the tenants in order to get the utility data. So work on that now. All properties must also complete the HEROES HUD environmental reporting for the application. A lot of people are familiar with the phase 1 site assessment, but the HEROES platform is a HUD-specific program we use in FHA lending and RAD. That's required with any federal dollars. Also, completion of HUD's capital needs assessment tools required. That really is a financial tool that justifies the capital needs you have and where these retrofits you're doing are fitting into the process. Those are application requirements. There's a few others, but some of the other just general requirements of the property you should be aware of is there'll be a lot of resident notifications, meeting, and rights, much like a RAD program, RAD project. You're going to have to create a property-specific disaster preparedness plan to deal with natural disasters in your location, whether it be alluvial flooding, coastal flooding, wildfires, whatever it may be. All properties have to have an extension of the affordability requirement if they agree to these funds. All properties must benchmark their properties for 5 years post-rehab in the Energy Star platform portfolio manager. We also have to require the Build America, Buy America requirements, the Section 3 requirements as well. Now, cohorts 2 and 3 have additional requirements. And one of them people don't like to hear is Davis-Bacon wage rates do apply. So it will increase your construction costs a little bit. Also, there is a post-construction cost certification to make sure the funds are used wisely and appropriately. And the biggest kicker is a high-level green building certification is required for cohorts 2 and 3. For cohort 1, it's recommended but not required. But it's required for 2 and 3. So the owner needs to be aware that the certification levels for GRRP are often much greater than your state finance housing agency requirements. Much of the requirements in the GRP are your gold and emerald status, your platinum earth crafts, your passive house, Energy Star Next Gen, Enterprise Green Communities Plus, or LEED Gold or Platinum. They're not Mickey Mouse green programs. They're quite extensive. So you do commit to a higher level of greening.
That's a lot of requirements, and glad we have people out here like you and DG3 that's assisting people to sort of navigate this. But just overall, so how does an owner of a qualified property actually know which cohort to focus on?
That's a great question as well. And really, to determine which cohort is best for a qualified property owner, I believe the questions they should ask themselves are, where are they in the repositioning process or recapitalization process right now? Are they in the middle of it? Are they thinking about it? Where are they? How much green experience do they have or development experience they have? If they don't have a lot, cohort 2 is very hard because it goes along with the qualifications of the developer as well as required for that. And I think the biggest one is, are your proposed properties ripe for decarbonization and electrification? And that's an important thing because scoring is based upon how much energy you can save if you enter the program. So we want to take those energy hogs that are burning fossil fuels. The worse you score, the worse efficient you are, the better chance you are of getting the funds. And finally, do your proposed projects have climate resiliency needs? Again, cohort 3, we got to address climate change as well. I know I'm in Virginia. The 202 in Richmond, Virginia has a lot of climate issues. Well, it's from a floodplain, but you put it out in Virginia Beach, and now we have exceedingly large need for climate measures. That's the kind of property we need to find for cohort 3. Cohort 1 is where you're midstream in a recapitalization event. It's best for the owner that may have had to value engineer some green items out of his current design. He wants to put them back in. This could be things like adding solar to the higher level of green certification. Cohort 2 is for the experienced developer. He's able to be an owner who's already planning a project, may want to commit to a higher level of green, to go full electric, to go full solar. That's a wonderful cohort 2 candidate. And cohort 3 is really the affordable housing owner with little capacity or green experience, but has advanced energy needs and climate needs. Also, I want to say one thing about what I like about the notice that came out is they mentioned something called transfer of assistance, Section 8BB. And not to geek out on you, but this is a wonderful part of the notice because let's say I have that Section 202 in Virginia Beach, and by 2030, it's actually going to be inundated by water. It gets flooded twice a year. We can actually move that subsidy to a better receiving site, potentially. That's true resiliency, moving the contract, moving the people to a much better, newer property. And that is allowed under the programs. A couple notes for developers, though. So let's say you know you have a qualifying property, cohort you're in. How do you score well? I'm going to give you the cliff notes of scoring well. Anyway, the elements cohort. So the first one, you score better if you seek green building certification. It's going to give you bonus points. Or you're achieving electrification, meaning you're getting away from all your fossil fuel sources. So you're switching that to a VRF system and a current 2-pipe heating cooling system. Or, much easier one, if the owner enters what's called the Department of Energy Better Climate Challenge and Better Buildings Challenge. There's 2 parts. Better climate is for climate resiliency, better buildings for energy efficiency. If you commit to these, your portfolio, which is greening your portfolios over 10 years, you will get preferential treatment as well as scoring. Now, in the leading edge cohort number 2, the only way you can score is by having a highly inefficient building. It's all based upon energy score. The lowest efficiency score will be scored the highest. It says it in ANOFA. That's why we need energy data, whole building energy data. Okay, cohort 3, a little more complex. It's a needs-based award. It'll take a little longer for HUD to evaluate, but this is based on climate risk as well as energy efficiency. There's a hazard score that the FEMA NRI portfolio gives, and HUD portfolio manager gives a score as well. In addition of those 2 scores, has to be greater than 120 points to qualify. So again, make sure your property or apartment qualifies before you submit the application. It's very important.
Very good. Rob, there's really a lot of good information. Really just kind of one last question around the program. We talked earlier about maybe both either a grant or a loan. Can you maybe just talk about the funding options, if you were chosen to be awarded these dollars?
Well, I kicked it off by talking about there's only $837 million in grants, $4 billion in loans. Okay, so choose wisely. Obviously, grants will be more competitive. The loans probably won't be as competitive. Now, with elements, if an owner takes the grant fully out, they have to increase their affordability restriction to 25 years or by 25 years. Or the owner can accept a surplus cash loan where the affordability restriction is only 15 years and the payment to HUD is 25% of annual surplus cash for a term of longer of the first mortgage or 15 years. And the interest is only 1%. That's the wonderful part of it. Now, cohort 2, it's the same, with the exception of the payback is 50% of annual surplus cash paid to HUD. But if you're taking out a $10 million loan at 1% interest and blending it in with your other loan doing the construction, you work out a pretty nice construction loan project. And finally, cohort 3 is the same as leading edge, 50% of annual surplus cash paid back to HUD. I see a lot of cohort 1 taking grant money. A lot of my affordable housing projects, nonprofit developers have a cash crunch right now trying to get something through a closing. Great way to pay for some things potentially into electrification. I see cohorts 2 and 3 using much more of the finance option. And really it's because of the taxes on it that you guys would know better than me, Don, on a loan versus a grant. But I think I just want to end it by imploring owners is make sure you qualify before you submit. Because if you qualify, you have to do a lot of work to get your property ready. Environmental assessments, some paperwork stuff, the benchmarking. And so make sure it qualifies. Other than that, find a good consultant that can help you with this for sure.
Very good.
But thank you, Don and Garrick. I appreciate it very much for the time I've had with you.
Oh, very good. And that's it for this episode of The Buzz House. A big thanks to Rob Hazelton with Dominion Due Diligence Group for joining the show today. Tell us about the impactful green and resilient retrofit program. Once again, I'm Don Bernards.
And I'm Garrick Gibson.
Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. For additional resources around multifamily housing, check out bakertilly.com. If you have a suggestion for the show, email us at build@bakertilly.com. That's BUILD at bakertilly.com. See you next time on Buzz House.